Hi, Masterminds. Welcome to today's Monday market update. We are in the final stretch before the US election. Well, it's tomorrow, but really it probably will hit more for us on Wednesday morning. But yeah, already if you're on Twitter, it is an absolute freak show on there with both sides convinced they are winning. And it's important, I guess, to try and get through that noise a little bit and just try and get some data from a different array of sources. Hopefully that can rip through the partisanship and give you that I guess accurate information that you're looking for to try and give you a bit of an indication. Because I think the thing that, and I'm writing a little report on this now, is no one knows anything and no one can be certain of anything. So we're really just trying to make, I guess it's like with Bitcoin and crypto in a way, we don't know anything for certain, but we know a certain directional pull and a certain lean based on seasonality and all that kind of stuff. But with the election, there are a ton of different variables that are throwing into it. And I reckon the last 24 hours to 48 to even 72 hours, we have seen so many curveballs and red herrings. We saw and I might just get into it now. We saw a pretty strange move in Polymarket where the odds suddenly massively closed. Now, this is kind of bringing it back more into line with, let's say, Nate Silver's model, and generally where a lot of the polls, the mainstream polls at least, is telling you where the race sits, which is, quote unquote, a toss up. But if you dive a bit deeper, it doesn't really seem to be, it's close, but it doesn't really seem to be that close. If you look at trends and historical data and also the early voting numbers, which are all pointing for a pretty strong Republican move here, shifting towards Trump, that in a nutshell. So, and it's not even shifting towards Trump. It is just constant, and I think with constant voting. But I think the overriding thing we just have to understand here is if all Kamala's supporters turn up, and this is the vibe I'm getting, then she'll probably win. But if Trump's levels are exceeding the 2020 levels and 2016 levels, and it's consistent and continually surging and bringing new voters to the polls, he's going to win. Kamala's voters are not turning up in the numbers that she needs. This is going to be an election won on turnout. And right now, Trump's team's come to the party and his voters are coming to the party, whereas the Democrats are not. They are actually down right now. And there seems to be a bit of a lack of enthusiasm right on Twitter. It's very hard to get a read. The Kamala supporters on Twitter are a cock a hoot. They think they've won. Trump supporters on Twitter are a cock a hoot. They think they've won. But in terms of the early voting numbers and the polling, the trend has been for a while across some of these polls. So a lot of these polls across the swing states were actually heavily Kamala a few months ago. And now they have just trended and trended and trended more red, and now Trump is leading in a few of them. And we know historically that Trump tends to under poll based on a variety of reasons. But for mine, the most obvious reason is that a lot of these pollsters, they go to friendly places where they think they've got a multitude of different voices, and they get their samples from that, and they do their best to do what they can to get an accurate read. But from what we've seen, whenever Trump is involved, his supporters do not trust the establishment. They do not trust the system. And when a pollster calls them or tries to reach out to them, they just refuse to talk to them. And they're a quiet voter. And that's exactly why we see that sort of that 3-point swing on election day, whereas, it's this sudden move of voters comes out of nowhere and votes for Trump, that type of thing. So if Trump is actually, polling in these types of regions where he's up 1 point, 2 point, 3 points, 5 points, you can almost, and I say almost, bank on the fact that he's going to carry that state. But again, these are polls, and I just they're wrong. They're almost always wrong. But I think we just have to remember they're almost always wrong in the side of they underestimate Trump. They're never really underestimating the Democrat side, because Democrats tend to poll really well. They're very eager to tell you who they're voting for, and they like to talk to pollsters. And they also love to early vote. And what is the big thing at the moment is watching the early voting numbers. Now, the difference between this election and the last election is Trump has actually told his supporters to go out and vote early to try and run up the tally and get a really big, sort of too big to rig almost. That's what he's saying, is we need to get the numbers on the board so it looks so obvious we're beating them by X amount. They're going to have to come up with a heck of a big steal or a heck of a big amount of voters, rocking up on election day to beat that. And what we're seeing is that's the Democrats' one wood. The early voting has always been their strongest suit, where they come out and they run up a really big tally, and then by election, Republicans vote on election day. That's historically what happens, and Democrats vote early. But right now, that firewall that Democrats usually build up it's much lower than it normally is. And you add on top of that, the rural vote is massively surging for the GOP, and early Republican voters are bigger than we've seen. Now, you could argue that, okay, well, maybe the Republican vote is being cannibalized a bit that normally would go on election day. They're voting early, and that's probably true a little bit. But based on the registrations, they're still, they're still kind of neck and neck. So if the GOP is surging in these type of areas, then if that's the Democrats one would, and they don't really have a big game traditionally on election day, that means they don't just come out and vote on election day. If they haven't voted early, they're not going to vote at all. And Trump generally does really well on election day. This could be a massive blowout. And that's why I'm just constantly thinking to myself, this could be a massive red sweep. It already looks like the Republicans are going to hold Congress. They're going to increase their majority, and it already looks like they're going to, get that Senate majority, which they're after, because that will control both houses. And here's the kicker: if they get the White House, they can control all three branches, and they can do whatever they want. So this is a really consequential election, especially for crypto and as an investor, we look at it. So all these Senate races, the congressional races, they all matter. And it's really going to be interesting whether, if people are voting Trump, if the Republicans are voting Trump, or even independents or undecideds, are they doing the kind of the balance, the check balance? Are they voting for Trump, and then down the ballot they're going Democrat to try and balance the scales? Or are they just so pissed off with what's going on in their country, and they're pissed off that they're having to vote for Trump, and then they're like, yeah, I'm just going to go Republican down the board to swing this, the other way? It is going to be fascinating as hell. That's my read on it, guys. And in the last 24 hours, the red herring was this Iowa poll, which put Harris up by 3. Now, Iowa it's a red state. It's rural. It's very much in favor of Trump. And all the other polls that I'm seeing around Iowa are nowhere near it. They've got Trump up by 10 and whatnot. Now, this has given the Democrats they've been shouting rooftop. If Iowa's like this, and the rest of the Rust Belt and the swing states that we're looking at, the female votes here, it's going to swing, towards Trump. We're doing a lot better than we think. Now, the reason why they're going cockahoo is the pollster that did this was Seltzer, who she has an incredible track record of calling sort of correct races. She says XYZ's up here, and they generally are around that mark. So with her polling, it's usually really good. This does look to be an outlier just based on the other really serious ones like Emerson and Atlas polling that came out directly after and literally put Trump up by 5 and 10. And again, this is a very red state, and based on the early voting, it doesn't make a ton of sense. So, I'm going to go with the bias there that this is an outlier, just based on everything else. But, it doesn't really matter. The election won't come down to Iowa. It will come down to the battleground states. But there's a lot of opportunity here for this to be a blowout in favor of Trump. Or, Kamala can still win this, absolutely. If this polling is all off, the early voting is all off, and Democrats come out in massive numbers on election day, then yeah, this could still go the other way. But it's looking definitely one way right now for a variety of reasons I've just mentioned. And in some cases, the early voting in regions that are traditional blue states are out voting the 2020 Trump early voting and 2016 Trump early voting as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. We just have to unpack it and keep moving through it. A new poll by NBC. So I love seeing what the mainstream and considered more left, more Democrat-leaning sources are saying, because if they are too putting Trump, up or favoring him in their polling, then that means that they've got a serious problem, or the Harris camp has a serious problem. And there's a few that come, New York Times, Siena, all this kind of stuff that they've been coming out recently with, Trump with very favorable national numbers, that he might actually be winning the national vote. And if you're winning the national vote as a Republican, you're not losing the electoral college. But again, this is all stuff that's going to be very fun to grab the popcorn and see tomorrow what happens. This is NBC News showing Trump leading by 16 with voters expected to vote on election day. So again, this goes back to my previous talking point about how the Democrat one would is early voting, and we know they're down on that. Republicans are surging and much higher than on that right now. They're building they're really eating into either a firewall or creating a firewall for themselves, which is just crazy. And then the Democrats do not arrive on election day historically. Republicans do. So again, this trending is looking very good right now for Trump. And here at this NBC saying the same thing. So the people who have already voted, by and large, Harris by 7. And on 16, Trump. So this is all very, very interesting stuff pointing in that direction. Where else do we have to look? Yeah, this was another one. So North Carolina is another battleground state. Now, if Trump's going to carry this in a big way, he's going to need to bring in the white male voter, and that's exactly the demographics been hitting. Going on Rogan, a lot of these other podcasts. He's really been cluing into the bro vote, quote unquote, and he needs to bring them out in big numbers because the female vote, around the abortion issue, that's going to be really, really strong for Harris, and we're already seeing it across the board. But still, broadly, Democrat vote is a bit down. It's probably because of the whole incumbency thing, maybe not understanding who she is still yet, not really understanding her policies versus, say, a Biden, whatnot. There's a lot going on there, but I just don't think you compare the two candidates and you know exactly what Trump is and what he's going for, whereas Kamala Harris is still a bit undecided. Anyway, we can go on a little bit about that another time, but here, this is data coming in North Carolina, again, a battleground state. So this is white voters coming in. So there is actually an increase by 400,000 white male voters, or sorry, not male, just white voters in general from 2020. And this is where Trump, outperformed all the polls and did incredibly well. So it's a great benchmark to see. He won in 16, lost in 2020 against Biden. So Democrats at least need to come in at the level that Biden was coming in. It just doesn't look like they are. And now we're seeing that Trump is outperforming his numbers in 2020. That's 400,000. That, some of these states can be decided by 10,000, 20,000 votes. 400,000 from a different demographic from a demographic that, doesn't really turn up in big numbers. This is huge. And the black vote as well. We know that there is actually quite an offshoot now of black voters going for Republicans for the first time in a long while. They feel they've kind of been taken for granted by the Democrats. There is a percentage there, and Trump is polling better with black voters than any Republican really has, I think, since going back to Nixon, if I'm not mistaken. So, black turnout is kind of on par where we've seen previously. And this is just in North Carolina. It's not from all the other states. But again, we can look at kind of these trends and just say, okay, black vote's still coming out at the same levels. If Kamala was going to, really get sort of catch up to these kind of increases of, and a lot of these white voters as well from Trump. I'm going to throw out that I don't have any quote evidence behind this, but I think they're what's the word? Not disenfranchised. They don't vote often. They're not sort of always haven't been registered to be a Democrat, Republican. They're kind of new to the scene, and there's been a lot of drive to bring new voters into the mix. And I reckon there's probably a mix in that 400,000 that's come into the stage recently, versus the black vote, which it doesn't seem to be massive new numbers just coming in out of nowhere. So if some of this vote is going to Republicans as well, it looks really, really good. What else did I have here? I think I just covered everything. Yeah, I could go into this all day and sort of break it down, but I think my feel is Trump's going to carry this, and I think we'll know fairly early on. And we also hear that let's just go back here, that Virginia is probably in play. Also, New Hampshire is probably in play, which Democrats just always carry. So there's the potential here for a few random flips towards the beginning on the East Coast, which again is almost like a Democratic firewall. And if you see kind of things look a bit skewy and start to flip, and some states get called for Trump that don't are blue states, then okay, well, the rest is kind of history. Regardless, Kamala's path here is really narrow. She needs to essentially, if everything is sort of going the way I think it is, then, and from some smart people on Twitter that I follow, like Mark Halperin and others that are strategists, they're kind of saying, look, Kamala has to pretty much now carry, according to what we're seeing, pretty much carry Wisconsin. What was the other one? Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. So the blue wall at the top, the kind of the Great Lakes states, and they have a lot of electoral votes, and they're kind of like where everyone's focusing their attention. And it kind of looks like Trump is going to take Pennsylvania, which is kind of like the key, the unlock, and he's doing really well in Wisconsin. So Kamala has to carry all three. There is no margin for error. She needs to win all three, and then she pretty much needs to stop Trump from winning anything else, underneath. So again, I don't want to sound like too doomerish for her, but there is the noise and the media are saying one thing, but it's not based in reality. This has 2016 vibes written all over it. So I just wanted to throw that out there and see where it's at. Now, again, the volatility, the washing machine of all this, we're going to be thrown through the absolute loop, guys. And I feel like we have already in the last 48 hours, but it's going to be Look, you could make the argument that we're pricing all this in now, and it's, all this volatility's here, and this next 48 hours isn't going to be too bad. But I just think it's going to be a whipsaw. That we can't know anything for certain, but I think we just have to maintain the theory and the thought here that we have to manage some kind of risk here, whether that be you move, more your percentages into Bitcoin and just be a little bit safer and use Bitcoin as your dry powder to buy, more of a dip here, or you have a bit of stable coin in reserve. Now, we all generally do have a bit of stable coin here to buy a big dip. And I think it's really important here just to remember where we're at. We're consolidating a few percentage points underneath the Bitcoin's all-time high. Seasonality wise, this is when we generally ramp. I think the election is that last little macro hurdle in the way before we have that, that move that we're all after. It's an anchor. We just need some clarity and some certainty about who's in power. I'm of the view, quite loudly, that it doesn't matter who is in power. Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to do really, really well, but crypto broadly will still do really well. But I think in the interim, the market is kind of really trying to position for a Trump presidency where crypto gets that positive regulation, the big boost, and I think we get that rip. But if we don't get it, then I think that the uncertainty, the surprise factor, the realization, okay, might be a bit of a tougher sell. We now have to deal with an administration in Kamala that hasn't been very transparent about what they want to do around crypto. So again, more uncertainty there until maybe we get more policy, coming through with the what's it called? Because she'll be president-elect, so they'll have to form a new cabinet, get their policies in order, and then we'll learn more as we go through November, December. But I think there could just be a big release after the election, and we just move up no matter who it is. But I do think it's problematic for crypto in the short term if Kamala wins, but not a problem for Bitcoin and Ethereum. If Trump wins, everything just moves. Everything just absolutely fucking moves. That's my view, my language. But we do have to just be careful in the short term. Again, it just looks like the stock market has just got the jitters, got the nervous energy, and we all do. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 48 hours, and also what's going to happen between election and inauguration. There could be a lot of red herrings thrown up. I just get the feeling that neither side is going to really accept the result here. That's my feeling. It's a bit of a shame, but I think both sides will feel like something's a bit off here, or say like if Trump loses, I think he's going to dispute it, and if Kamala loses it, I think there might be a fallout in the respect that they feel like they've lost their country to a fascist and all this kind of stuff. So that throws up another kettle of fish. Anyway, I don't want to be too doomerish, but again, but that's the volatility I'm talking about. It's not just markets and pricing in stuff. It could be events, it could be riots, it could be things like that. So just wanted to throw that out there, but we're going to get through it, and I think Bitcoin is going to do incredibly well after this phase. I do feel like a broken record in that regard, and we just have macro after macro thing. So yes, S&P 500 there. Let me just have a look at some of the other macro charts just to sort of see if anything's giving us any idea of what the go is. I do know that the US had a pretty dismal non-farm payroll report, which was only about 12,000, and they were expecting about 120,000, that kind of thing. So these data points coming out about a slowdown, a recession, are just picking up now, even though there are certain segments of the economy that are still quite robust. The Fed is just looking now at the unemployment data and the jobs figures versus inflation. Yes, if inflation really kicks up again, they're going to be concerned about it and worried and whatnot. But there doesn't seem to be any pulse there for raising rates or stopping rate cuts. And we saw the CME as well pricing in more rate cuts. So the weird thing is the volatility is going to be with us all week because we've got the election on the 5th, then we've got the Fed doing its thing on the 7th. So the dollar's kind of telling us here a little bit. It is above the 200, sure, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it begin to roll over here because the Fed's going to cut rates again. So just putting that out there, which should be really good for risk assets. If you look at the summary there. Gold as well, I think just sort of bottoming in here, doing really well. I think it will have obviously this period of uncertainty, but I think because of the uncertainty, it will do really well. Yields also going a little bit higher. And again, I'm put this in my report that I'm doing today. Yields are up 21% since they started cutting rates, which just tells me the market is concerned with both candidates with their inflationary policies, Trump being the tariffs and Kamala with just general spending and some initiatives that they want to do. But you could also look at it from the vantage point that the bond market is pricing in a Trump presidency. So yields will be higher for longer. Inflation won't get fully tamed. We're going to have rising of the debt, that kind of thinking. So I can look at it in two ways. The bond market kind of is pricing in the Trump presidency, but also it's also hedging itself with both candidates because they're both going to be inflationary for different reasons. And these yields still look to be, going high, but it is getting close to this kind of trend line, which I do expect to hit, and it will probably get a release valve at some point going a little bit lower, especially if they're cutting rates. So that's what I'm looking at there. Now, was there anything else there? No. Before we go to Bitcoin, I want to have a look at dominance and sort of start from this angle first. Then we'll look into some charts that I really like the look of. So dominance just is careering high, 60%. Where is it going to end? Let's go out to the weekly here. So we are in really, now I have said in the past that it's very hard to chart the dominance, but I don't know if that is entirely the case, because if I'm just looking at, the chart, there is, some reason to think when we, see momentum and all this kind of stuff, it's the same, it's tradable, whatnot. So yeah, maybe I was a little bit hasty on that call, but yeah, 60%, this kind of is the area where I would expect us, this magnet, I'll just move it up a little bit, for us to begin to either see, full bust up through, or we get that trend reversal, and we're in the areas where we should be. This was 2021 Feb, where altcoins rolled over. Where are we kind of historically? Would be 2020 going into the, okay, so we're essentially in this mode here. So 2020, back end of the year, election, run up, Bitcoin dominance is just going through the ceiling until December. That's when we had the rollover finally for altcoins. This consequential election could throw up some red herrings through here, but it just looks like Bitcoin is the place to be through this period until we get a resolution of that. There's no real rollover here yet. We could go down to lower time frames, but this just looks really strong at the moment. I wouldn't bet against it just yet. This looks like it wants to rip, maybe for a final blow off. USDT dominance, have a look. Where's the capital going? This actually looks really good for it's kind of running back into resistance here, and this could very well be the start of USDT rolling over dominance in terms of back into the crypto market. Let's have a look but there's no confirmation there, of course. Total 3 running back into moving averages. Yeah, it doesn't look that great there, if I'm honest. Really need to get back above that 643 billion level. Right here, we're grappling with support. I mean, it doesn't look bad, doesn't look good, but wouldn't want to close, beneath these kind of areas. Then altcoins are going to get absolutely smashed below that 50 on the RSI, the daily. Yeah, I don't really like the look at that. It's 3 hits at the top, and it does look like this might want to come down to the bottom here. Now, the 2 charts that I was really liking the look of this morning was, SUI BTC. So I'm just looking at those core assets, those high conviction assets that, if they're performing against Bitcoin and they're sort of rallying. So SUI had a really big rollover. It really dug deep into the 100, is that the 100 moving average? No, 50 moving average on the daily. Over here, my squiggle there, not quite accurate, but I'll just try to delete that. But it's just consolidating, hit it again here on the nose, and this could be this kind of falling wedge, fake out to the downside, and it wants to rip higher. It's back above the 50 here, so really nice pullback to $1.76. Sort of gets a lot of this liquidity, taps it, but the BTC chart is where you get your alpha from, and if it's holding up and maintaining that relative strength, the RSI just pointing up, above that 50 mark. Stoke looks really good. This looks really nice, I'm not going to lie, guys. Another, higher low. Looks like we're going to track for that circle that I've got up there. I've got an alert there telling me once it's through here, it's creating a higher high and that higher low trend, and I think it's really much off. So really like that chart there. And SUI, you can see there on my watch list, it's just beating ETH, it's beating SOL, beating USD, and it's beating BTC. That's what you want to be in. That's what you want to be looking at. SOL USD, I'm not too far away in a similar sense with SOL that I'm with SUI. I thought SUI looked horrible yesterday morning. Now it looks fantastic. I thought Solana looked better yesterday morning. Now it looks worse than SUI. So it can really flip in 24 hours. So I think it's just important to pick the cryptos and the winners that you want to be in for the next 6 months, and allocate to them, and you can trade around the edges and try and add and switch and rotate, and it can be very, very useful to add to your bags. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, just stay clear of it. Right here, wouldn't want to close beneath this sort of horizontal support here. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's coming back into liquidity. 4 hour might give us more info here. Don't mind that, actually, to be honest. Yeah, very strong bull divergence on the 4 hour. Momentum's picking up. Stokos, I was holding at the 50. This actually looks really good for a near-term reversal. So if I'm just sort of looking down here, Solana cracks through here. It's sort of reversed the trend, and it's probably going back up to 175, 180. So don't mind that at all. Once it makes that reversal, we're probably going to see it in Bitcoin as well. Yeah, so it's a pretty similar chart. Don't mind another massive bull divergence on Solana there as well. So like that. But for now, it looks like Sui is the real preferred crypto right now. Let's have a look what meme coins are doing. Doge's been an interesting one in terms of the Elon Musk Trump proxy play coming back to range low. That actually looks really good as a risk reward entry to buy back in. Yeah, there's another one, Popcat. Oh, excuse me. Popcat's been one of the strongest meme coins going around out there, and I really didn't like the look of this bear divergence, which was up here. So maybe if we go out to the daily. I think some of these coins, it's pretty much we're getting close to the moment and the time that you want to be buying the dip. If you hadn't have bids laid in lower already, I would not only do that, but I'd be starting to look at accumulating some of these crypto tokens after they've been smashed by 30%. So again, this is just how good bearish divergence, especially triple bearish divergences, in terms of triple peaks, that is so useful to watch for trend reversals where you can manage some risk, take some profit, and be pretty comfortable with that. Because if the divergence breaks through, all right, sweet, we're going much, much higher. But if it rolls over, you probably save yourself 20-30% in the drawdown. So here I was just watching this pop catch, as you can see here in this rising wedge, but peak, 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 peak. What was momentum doing? Downtrending. Those peaks were all downtrending. So this one here might have sort of confused a few people as it was coming back. But just broadly, that's a pretty good spot to just manage a little bit because it's lower than, I guess, the original peak. And we had from that peak to the down move there, 31%, 32% move, hit the 0.618 level there, 124, which is just crazy. I kind of had in the back of my head, it could have got it down to 108. I think I had some orders down there. But this here, though, this is a pretty good area. If you think Popcat is going to be the one of the prime meme coin movers going forward, then you're looking at these kind of areas. Here looks like it's bottomed on the 4 hour, I think, just looking at it. But I would probably be waiting for this. Just looks like the classic. I'm running back into 200 EMA and the 200 SMA. On the 4 hour, we run back in, and just at the very end, we close beneath. But if we close above, could be I think we've just closed actually, it could be very, very useful, as in for a reversal signal. All this looks really, really good. Now, one thing on, I haven't touched on is actually Bitcoin, which is quite hilarious. So let's go to BTC and just see where we sit. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad at all. Everything looks like it has reset. A lot of open interest has been wiped as well, guys, which is really, really important. No, let's go to the weekly because we just had the weekly close. So I think we mentioned last week that the monthly was a fantastic looking candle, but monthly candles can have an incredible amount of volatility inside them, but broadly the trend can give you an idea of where it goes. The weekly doing this big ugly close is not ideal. However, I mean, it's still, it's massive wick. It's not the end of the world. I think we definitely want to get back above 70,000 in this candle, or this next few just through here. But again, with the election here, it's kind of like a little bit of a just wait and see. Candles are going to be candles. I don't know if you can really chart off it. You can, but you're going a little bit deep there. Let's go to the daily. So really nice movement back. And if you're just looking at this, we ran into just under all-time high, and we've come back into support. That's the classic breakout, retest, and then we go much, much higher. So yeah, that's kind of where I see it, guys. This is not doom and gloom by any measure whatsoever. I think this just looks like, I think we always said, go at the 70, go at the 73. We're probably going to just range, get sold into a bit, come back down, buy. We're going to take time to break this. But I think the election is that key, crucial, pivotal point. On the flip side, there we just don't want to lose that 66,000. So you can see kind of this cluster here, not only the volume, but just the candles you can see here. We're into that 20 EMA through here, but this yellow line is pretty useful. So just anything underneath that, and we're going lower, we're going to 64,000, and then we're grappling in here. But again, the liquidity and the support now coming in, especially when you think about ETFs as well, are going to be buying this dip, especially if you see Trump's chances sort of improving or at least stabilizing here. I think we do see bounce and uptick higher. That's my immediate feeling, but there's going to be a few more jitters as we head into the election day. So guys, I hope you have enjoyed this. I think as well, just to mention on strategy, just try and keep things hyper narrow and hyper focused into just the high conviction coins that you're looking at. Buy the dip on those. Don't really stretch yourself too much. Keep that short-term trading impulse to a massive minimum. This is not a time to be, screwing around with, short-term trades and seeing, divergence on a 4-hour on a random low micro cap. Just don't. We've got the election. We need to get through that, and I'd be just focusing on that small group of cryptos that are, trying to outperform Bitcoin and the market leaders right now. And right now, it really is. You could argue that all you need right now is a portfolio of Bitcoin, Solana, and Sui, and just be rotating between the two. And you know what? If Sui and Solana just stop performing and they're just drowning against Bitcoin, which there's a little bit of a struggle there, but I think they're going to both do really well. You could then just make the argument, just stay fully in BTC and then move out. But again, tax implications will matter. I'm not a massive fan of that. I never touch my long-term portfolio. I have it set. I have those percentages always set. I never mess with them, because if you start mucking around with your longer term stuff, you're essentially just day trading your entire portfolio. And that's where you make serious mistakes. You get massive tax implications, then you start pulling your hair out and you lose a lot of money. So, guys, I'm incredibly excited, incredibly bullish what is to come. We're just going to have to live through this next little phase. And I think we're living through history, honestly. This is one of the most consequential elections in modern memory. So, I hope you have a wonderful day. And you know what, maybe as well, I will post this as well to the free groups as well, because I think there's a lot in here that everyone will get a lot from. Masterminds, feel free to drop me a line in the groups. There's lots I want to talk about. I'm going to keep updating the strategy hub section as well with things I'm thinking. The Trump report, I'm going to try and get out today, everyone. So we're getting in front of the election. So for everyone watching this, I'm going to be putting out a report on the election, sort of covering my predictions around, Harris and Trump, how the crypto market will get affected, what I'm currently seeing, that I've kind of gone into a little bit here. In the report, it'll be a little bit more high level, because I don't want to get too partisan or bipartisan. Excuse me. I don't want to get too partisan either way. I want it to be more bipartisan, but I want to just tell you what I'm seeing, just give you some insight into what I'm seeing in a lot of the data. And I mean, because I'm on X all the time and also listening to a lot of podcasts and different channels around this, and trying to sift through that data the best I can. So hope you have a wonderful day, everyone, and we'll catch you again soon. Bye bye.